Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. First, a quick reminder that we are now on Eastern Daylight Savings Time this morning. Be sure that you have sprung forward. Later, the head of Lexington's Office of Homeless Prevention will be talking about some encouraging trends and some challenges ahead. We'll also see a report about today's scheduled implosion of the Capitol Plaza State Office building and our plans to bring that to you live later today. But first, my backstage one-on-one interview with Vice President Mike Pence. The Vice President came to Kentucky to talk about the effect of tax cuts, and while here, he tried to help Republican Congressman Andy Barr, who is up for re-election. I talked with the nation's #2 leader about a variety of issues following his speech at More Than a Bakery in Versailles. Mr. Vice President, again, welcome to Kentucky.
Great to be back, Bill.
You got to meet American Pharaoh.
I got to meet American Pharaoh. It was really exciting. We had some rounds earlier this morning, arrived last night, but the team told me that we might have an opportunity to see that incredible horse.
Do something special.
And I had the chance to. They actually let me act as a farrier for a second. Hold him. What a great animal, and the funds that they raised for charity out there with American Pharaoh. It's a great tribute to the whole team.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has issued a lot of concerns about the proposed tariffs on imported aluminum and steel. He says he has great concerns about a potential trade war. Here in Kentucky, there are concerns about targeted retaliation against the bourbon industry. It employs thousands. Can you say anything to relieve those concerns?
Well, first, President Trump and I have tremendous respect and appreciation for Senator Mitch McConnell. All of the progress that we celebrated here today, rolling back regulations, conservatives appointed to our courts, and of course our historic tax cuts and reform would not have been possible without the strong support of the Senate Majority Leader, and he's done a great job. But look, as President Trump has said, when it comes to trade, he believes that our nation has been taken advantage of for too many years by too many countries. That's why we're renegotiating NAFTA as we speak, to make this deal now be the kind of deal that'll work for American workers and American companies. But also, all of our trade relationships around the world are a real focus of this president, who believes that with a trade deficit in the hundreds of billions of dollars every year with a wider world, this is the strongest economy on the planet, ought to be prepared to take action.
But you can appreciate the concerns here in Kentucky that there might be targets because of Senator McConnell being the leader and potentially going after the bourbon industry.
Well, and we've heard that from the leadership of the European Union. But let's be clear, the tariffs that the president has spoken of have to do with our national security and with the strength of our economy. The Congress gave the president the authority to take action to make sure the United States of America has a vibrant and effective steel and aluminum industry. So the president's working through the details of that. The scope of that, I know, is a subject of active discussion that will continue when I return to the White House later today. But make no mistake about it, the president is going to continue to fight for American jobs, American workers here in Kentucky, and we really believe that by taking a strong stand for the American economy and the American worker, we're going to have more trade and more productive relationships with the European Union and countries around the world.
You came here today to talk about tax cuts. Certainly has been extremely popular in the business community. How will everyday Kentuckians see this benefit them in a sustained way?
Well, we've already seen the president's tax cut impact people across Kentucky and across America in real and material ways. Wages are starting to rise faster than they have in the last 10 years. We've seen almost $500 billion of investment announced by companies, including companies here in Kentucky, all over the United States because of the tax cut. That means more jobs, more opportunities. But make no mistake about it, 9 out of 10 people in this state and across this country are going to see their taxes cut. And we believe when these tax cuts fully are implemented and take effect, that the average working family here in Kentucky is going to see their income rise by several $1,000s. So it's a formula that has worked in the past, and it's really working again. Less government, less regulation, and less taxes on working families all results in a growing and expanding economy, and that means jobs and opportunities for the future.
School safety is on the minds of Americans after the shooting in Florida. We had one here in Kentucky earlier this year. Mr. Vice President, do you anticipate federal legislation or executive orders in any way that might address the kinds of things that might have prevented those before and could prevent such incidents in the future?
Well, here in Kentucky, the hearts of the nation broke to look on at the tragic events in Marshall County in January, and then Parkland, Florida. But Bill, this has been going on since the days of Columbine 20 years ago. And President Trump believes that no parent should ever fear for their child when they drop them off at school. No teachers should ever fear for their safety when they're teaching our kids. And the president has been calling on leaders in Congress in both political parties to work with our administration to strengthen our background check system, to give schools new resources, to give families new tools to be able to deal with a family member who's struggling with dangerous mental illness. We want to empower law enforcement and local communities to take action, but I can assure you we're going to continue to drive forward. And this time we're not going to let Washington just move on. We're going to demand that leaders in both political parties rally behind the president's call, and we take action that will strengthen our laws, strengthen our background checks, and give law enforcement and families new tools that'll make our kids safe.
Well, we'll be respectful of your time, and thank you very much for speaking with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
And stay with us here on Kentucky Newsmakers. The numbers are going in the right direction for a change when it comes to homelessness in Lexington. And later, Sam Dick looks at the big office building in Frankfort that will be imploded today. We're coming back on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Finally, there are some encouraging numbers from a homeless count in Lexington. The numbers are down, but many advocates say it is no time to back off of a commitment to deal with the issue. For some time, Lexington has had more people living on the streets than Metro Louisville, which has more than twice the population. Over the last few years, Lexington leaders have put a priority on trying to improve things: affordable housing, a panhandling ordinance, and efforts to get people into treatment or to financial advice. Depending on their circumstances, those are among the strategies that are being deployed. There's also an Office of Homelessness Prevention, and Polly Ruddick is the director, and she joins us this morning on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
And especially under these circumstances, finally some encouraging numbers with that homeless count. Tell us how that was conducted.
So each year we are regulated by the Housing and Urban Development to do a count. Within 24 hours, we locate, talk to every homeless person in Lexington.
How do you do that?
So this year, well, it takes a village.
Sure.
So every shelter in Lexington participates. We have volunteers go into those shelters and talk to people. We also had about 87 volunteers gather at the New Life Day Center on January 24th. They're assigned teams that go out. There's usually about 4 or 5 people in each team. They're assigned a set of locations. Those locations are formulated by police, code enforcement, our street outreach team, different locations from the public that we've been tipped off where people may be. We did over 100 locations, even got some new tips on the night of, so we assign those locations. When we go out and we talk to people, so we scour every nook and cranny in Lexington for about, I think this year it was about 3 hours. I think that's what we were out there.
How sensitive is that, really? You know, when you're coming to people who may be in, as you said, hard to find camps and locations, just locating them is difficult, and then you're approaching them and
Yes.
and asking them some tough and maybe personal questions.
So we do volunteer training, and we talk about the understanding that you're walking into their home, and it's no different than someone coming into your home. Be respectful, how to engage people in their space. If there's mental health issues going on, how to engage people with those it's about a 2-hour training. Every volunteer gets the training. So they're very aware of their circumstances. We also pack goodie bags. and offer goodie bags, blankets, personal hygiene, food, water, kind of as a olive branch. Some people want to talk to us, some people don't, and that's fine. That's up to them.
Are there sometimes tough reactions?
Usually they're actually really nice. We've never had to call the police, and we've always had respectful interactions. Now, I will say that a lot of our volunteers, knowing what is going on and the training that they've received, they're very respectful of the situation. They're not going to push somebody into talking that doesn't want to.
So that's key. Yeah. What are the results of the count? The numbers are significantly better.
Well, they're good. They're going in the right direction. Yeah. So this year, on January 24th, we located 685 individuals, and that includes family members. So when I say that was unsheltered, we found 23 people sleeping on the streets or in a camp. We found 610 people in emergency shelters, and then the others were in transitional housing. So when we do this count, we're counting everybody that wouldn't have a permanent address. So emergency shelters, transitional housing, or sleeping on the streets. Those are included in those numbers.
How encouraged are you that the homeless numbers are down?
We took a moment and congratulated each other as far as our transition into a permanent housing focused community, but we have a lot of work to do. We have not reached zero, we've reduced it, and we want to keep that positive trend going. So even this past week, we had the Lexington Ending Homelessness Academy for our community providers, and then we also had the Community Summit for the public to come in and learn about how we fund, how we look at outcomes, give us their feedback on how we're doing.
What were the kinds of things that were discussed at that summit and gathering?
So one of the most interesting things, I think, is we know that about $1.5 million, if we had that today, we could actually end chronic homelessness in Lexington. That's an annual investment. So we have 92 individuals and 2 families that were chronically homeless. So they're our most critical. They've been homeless the longest. Annually, to start out for the first 3 years, it's going to be about 1.5 million. So we've kind of talked about, what does that look like? What does that strategic plan look like? Who's at the table? Is it private funders? Is it a partnership between private and public dollars?
Do some other cities go that route?
Some cities do, and it's becoming more of a trend as we see large corporations and foundations moving in a direction of strategic planning for the community as a whole. So instead of funding one project here, foundations and corporations are looking at funding impact, community impact, rather than just outputs. And so other cities are doing it, and they're doing it very successfully. So that's something that has come up in the last week about how Lexington, as we move forward, we know how much dollars we need to end certain sections of our homeless population and how to make that work.
It seems it would be in the interest of business to help with the image of the community, as well as they make customers out of people, right?
Well, as you stably house somebody, one of the things we focus on in permanently housing those folks is integration in their community, with their neighbors, with their transportation system. So getting them set up and kind of integrating them into the community, and that has to do with jobs. Where do you shop? Who's your landlord? Those are, so all those things kind of roll in. So it is an investment back into the community.
Polly, is there a typical face of homelessness in Lexington?
No.
Interesting.
It's when you say typical face, I can give you demographics.
Yeah.
White men. That's our
largest
leading
sector.
That's our largest leading demographic in our homeless population. But we don't put a face on homelessness.
Lexington is a city like many others of haves and have-nots. This is a community with beautiful, sprawling, world-famous horse farms, some very expensive homes in some areas, and yet many so marginally housed or nowhere at all to go but to live on the streets. How does a caring community bridge a gap like that?
So I think it's real important to look at the problem and the research for solving that problem. For example, poverty and the research for solving poverty is very different than the research for solving homelessness. So I think when a community wants to get involved and they want to support the ending of homelessness, the reducing of homelessness, you're not necessarily encompassing marginally housed or your poverty. And there's a lot of research and a lot of data that goes behind ending and reducing homelessness. And I think that's where the city and the community moving forward will look at that research and evidence-based practices, best practices from other cities that we can implement here and make work in Lexington. Each area is very local and has their own kind of local vibe, and we would have to kind of incorporate best practices here in Lexington.
To what extent is Lexington a destination for people without a place to go? Because it has the resources and does attempt to address the issue.
So that does happen. It's happened. I've been in this office 9 months, and at least once a week I get a phone call that says, I'm coming from. Last week I got an email from somebody in Massachusetts that always wanted to live in the Bluegrass State. And so we deal with that inflow. So we have some programs that allow people who come to Lexington and may get stuck to go back to where they need to be for permanent housing. We have programs that fund that. But once you're here and you want to stay here, we'll do whatever we can to make you a citizen of Fayette County.
What are the kinds of things that you can offer to people other than, as you say, that temporary stopgap housing?
Mm-hmm. So we do several other projects. We do our permanent housing, we have our emergency shelters, but we have our long distance transportation program, which I did mention. So if you come to us and you say, I want to go back to my family in Michigan, we can make that happen. We also have a plethora in this community of substance abuse. So if you come to us and say, I would like some substance abuse treatment, we can refer you out to those. If you come to us and say, I want to stay in my apartment, I want to be permanently housed, but in order to do that, I need mental health services, we can make that happen.
Do you feel the resources are adequate to deal with those challenges?
There's some gaps, but I think the mental health, substance abuse, financial counseling, budgeting, we do really well in those areas. There's gaps in our system, and I think that's what we're going to identify this year. As
spring approaches and the weather will warm up, and a day like this, it's been tough because winter has chased us, it seems, for weeks and months. But we know that warmer days are coming. Panhandling traditionally also rises. Lexington has looked for a solution to that, and there are some indications of some improvement there as well.
So last year, towards the end of the year, we did see about a 75% decrease in our panhandling. Panhandling is a different problem than homelessness. They do not go together. Panhandlers are not necessarily homeless individuals. And I've talked to several groups about the professional panhandling that happens in our community. Lexington is a very caring and giving community, and it's very easy for people to kind of take advantage of our compassion. So we'll see what spring brings. The van will still be running. We have some other programs under development that hope to put people to work instead of out there with a sign, and we'll just have to kind of see what spring brings.
For people who are not familiar with what the city is doing, there's the compassionate care van that is running, and that goes out, and you're looking for people in that case who need somewhere to go, right?
For the winter, the compassionate care van runs during our emergency winter weather plan. So does our Hope Center Street Outreach team. So if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago if we would have ever, the rest of this year, been under our emergency plan, I would have said, no, it's spring.
Right.
So we activated our emergency winter weather plan, which happens when it goes under 32 degrees, yesterday. And basically, if anybody sees someone, or if anybody has told someone would like a free ride to shelter, there's two numbers. There's the Compassionate Caravan and the Hope Center Street Outreach team that will give them. Lexington does free rides during this period too. We have enough shelter beds in Lexington. No one has to sleep on the street. We are very lucky in that capacity. Other cities are on waiting lists for their emergency shelter. Lexington has enough shelter beds for everybody.
Polly, is this a tough love sort of job for you? I mean, you have to get people to where they need to be. You need to get them offered opportunities, but are there times when you have to lay some rules down, both for the folks who are out there as well as to the city leadership? We need to move on this.
It's a love job, and sometimes yes, sometimes you'll have interactions with homeless individuals that don't make any sense to me, and I just have to go back and remove my morals, my ethics, and say that's a different person. They're an adult and they can make their own decisions, and I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to keep engaging them and keep being respectful of their decisions. We've had a lot of people that we continue to engage that finally come around and say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for housing. I'm ready for services. And it's kind of the same thing. It kind of brings it back to a strategic plan and kind of following that plan. And you talk about the leadership and getting people on board with that plan. It's out of love that we come to that strategic plan. So I don't know about tough love, but we all do love what we do. I
don't want to drag you into politics, but it is a year, when there are candidates for mayor and council and so forth. Do you anticipate that you will reach out to some of them, or they will to you, to see where this may be headed? Do you feel that they support these efforts, all the candidates?
So I think there is unanimous support for ending and reducing homelessness. I can't speak for any individual candidate that is running for election. I know the feedback that I get from the community as a whole is that they support this office and they support what this community is doing.
I want to thank you for coming in. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Polly Ruddick, who runs Lexington's Office of Homelessness Prevention. All right, stay with us. We're coming back and we'll have a look ahead to today's scheduled implosion of the Capitol Plaza State Office Building. It's now just hours away. Coming up on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Frankfort's tallest building has served our Commonwealth quite well for decades. Big decisions have been made there, disputes have been settled there, and state workers have spent countless hours doing the people's business there. Later today, the building, which was deemed too expensive to repair, will be imploded. WKYT will bring you the live coverage of that on the CW Lexington, a special report starting at 1 o'clock. Right now, Sam Dick looks back and looks ahead to the big building coming down.
After 46 years of state government service, all 28 stories of the Capitol Plaza Tower are coming down in less than 30 seconds.
We'll be using a combination of dynamite and also a product called PETN, det cord.
And this is the man in charge of the implosion, Jim Santora of Controlled Demolition Incorporated, a three-generation, 67-year-old company out of Maryland. They claim they've done 8,000 building demolitions. He explained, in very basic terms, how the tower will implode or collapse on itself.
We're going to be loading explosives on 8 floors in the building.
Those floors have blast curtains up along the outside wall.
3 bottom floors will be, or what we call our drop floor. That's where we're going to take out the greatest height of column.
So essentially, the bottom floors will collapse and the rest of the floors will come down in a massive heap.
On the upper floors, we've just loaded in a band so that we can control the direction of fall and where the building is failing. When the charges go off, they're going to start on this end of the building and then move backwards. And they're going from slicing through the building like a loaf of bread, going vertically with the charges.
I asked, how loud will it sound?
Probably like having a thunderstorm pass directly overhead.
He expects a dust cloud for an hour or so. They remove carpet, ceiling tiles, and drywall to reduce the amount of dust. But before they turned the tower into a shell, it had one last use. Various law enforcement and special response agencies used it for training.
Because it's not often you find a 24-story building that's empty that you can go in and tear things up while you're in there. So they have been in doing SWAT team training, special response training, and they have done usually quite heavily there for about a month.
A 5-story building with as much square footage as the tower will take its place, but be able to accommodate twice as many workers. More efficient, more modern. Time marches on, or in this case, implodes.
Well, it certainly should be something to see. And again, WKYT News will bring you a special report on the CW Lexington. We have that scheduled for 1 until 2 o'clock this afternoon. And Sam Dick and our Amber Philpott will be anchoring that coverage for us. Again, CW Lexington, 1 o'clock for today's implosion in Frankfurt. Well, that's our edition of WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We want to thank you for joining us. Of course, invite you for the latest news bright and early on WKYT this morning, this week, and you make it a good week ahead.